Hello S2. So, this week we are looking at Viking religion and beliefs. Now, what we are going to do today, we're learning all about Vikings' religion and their beliefs, as I said. So, by the end of the lesson, you should be able to explain what the Vikings believed in and how they worshipped. Name two gods or goddesses and describe what they represent. And compare Vikings' religion to our religions today. So, that is our three main aims. Now, firstly, task number one, your warm activity is to write down as many different religions as you can. Now, again, you'll be able to complete all these activities through the worksheets that are uploaded in the assignments tab in Microsoft Teams. So, again, if you pause the PowerPoint here and try to write down as many different religions as you can. Okay, so Viking religion and beliefs. Viking religion and beliefs are similar to ours in some ways, but also very different too. Now, you've just named some religions that you know about today that you can name. We're going to think about those religions and try and compare our religion, in particular Christianity, to the Vikings' religion and beliefs. Now, Vikings and Christianity. At the beginning, the Vikings were pagans. Now, the word pagan means that they believe in lots of different gods. They believe in more than one god, not just one god like we do today. They were pagans, so lots of different gods. Now, comparing that to people in Britain, predominantly today, even us today, people in Britain were Christians. So when they raided and settled in places like Britain, the Vikings came into contact with Christianity. Now, at first, they were against Christianity, many of them. They would burn churches, they would attack priests, they would attack monasteries, and there was a lot of religious tension between the Vikings and people in Britain. However, as they stayed in Britain for a long, long time, some of them began to adopt Christianity, and soon most Vikings had become Christians. Viking leaders afterwards even started to found churches and put up painted stone crosses. But some Vikings did continue to follow their old religion as well. Now, task number two, again, you'll need to pause the PowerPoint here, but task number two, we use the BBC Bite-Size link above there, and as you scroll down to the bottom of that page, when you go into that link, you'll see there's a video. So you're looking just to watch the short video about Viking beliefs and try and write down two facts from the video, again on your sheet, which is under the assignments tab. Now, we found out a wee bit more about Viking beliefs and religion. We're now going to look at some of the Viking gods and goddesses in a bit more detail. Now, some of these gods or goddesses you may know about or have heard of before, particularly through movies. An example being, who we'll look at in a minute, would be Thor, would be one that would maybe stand out for you. The first Viking god we're going to discuss is Odin. Now, Odin was the ruler of the gods. He was the god of war, as well as poetry and magic. Now, he had two ravens called Memory and Thought, who flew around the world every morning for him to find out everything that was happening. Now, in order to gain more knowledge, he sacrificed one of his eyes. Okay, so Odin only had one eye, as you can see in the picture there. And the fun fact about Odin is that the name Wednesday actually comes from Odin's Day. So that is Odin. Now, the next god, before I even reveal the name, you'll see there, you'll probably recognise that as being Thor. Now, Thor was the son of Odin. Now, he was also the god of skies, storms, and thunder. Now, he had iron gloves, a magic belt, and a hammer, which he's probably most famous for. Now, Thor was a very popular Viking god. Why do you think he would be so popular? Have a think about that. Now, the fun fact about Thor is that Thursday originally meant Thursday. Next up we have Loki. Now, Loki was the god of mischief and a terrible trickster. Now, he was especially good at this because he could change shape. Okay, he was a shape shifter. So as a result, he tricked a lot of gods into giving him their weapons. So Loki was a bit more cunning and maybe not as liked as other gods. There's also Tyr. Now, Tyr was the god of war before Odin. Now, he only had one hand, as you see from the picture there as well, because his right hand was apparently bitten off by Fenrir, a gigantic wolf. Now, Tuesday, fun fact about Tyr, Tuesday comes from Tyr's Day. And the last two gods and goddesses that we're going to look at just now briefly is Sol and Mani. Now, Sol was the sun goddess, as you see on the left hand side there, and Mane was her brother, the moon god, who rode through the sky on horse-drawn chariots, causing day and night. Now, our third task for today is using the information in the PowerPoint that we've just discussed. You need to try and fill out the table on Viking Gods and Goddesses. Now, the first one is done for you. So you have here Odin. He's the god, goddess of, so he's the god, he's the ruler of gods, and he's the god of war, poetry, and magic. Now, any interesting facts about him? He had 2 ravens which checked the world for him. He had 1 eye, and the name Wednesday actually comes from Odin's Day. So that is Odin. You then need to fill out the information for Thor, Loki, Tyr, and Solomane. Now, if you want to add any additional gods or goddesses that you find out about, then you can do that as well. And again, this table can be found on the worksheet, which is under the assignment tab. Now, Viking myths and gods. So I found out a bit about the Viking beliefs, I found out a bit more about their gods. Now we're going to find out a wee bit more about the myths that they had about certain gods as well. So the Vikings like to tell many stories and myths, mostly about gods, also about giants, trolls, and dragons. Now these stories became known as Norse myths. Now the 3 main gods that they liked to worship were Thor, Odin, and Freyr. Now each was believed to have an important role in everyday life for Vikings. Now some of the Viking myths about gods were stranger than others. One myth actually involves Thor trying to prove his strength to the giant king by trying to lift a giant cat, and apparently he failed in doing so. Now, the dead and Valhalla. Now, the Vikings' aim of death was to reach what they called Valhalla. Now, Valhalla is a great hall in the afterlife where great warriors went, effectively our version of heaven. Now, the only way that Vikings felt they could get there was dying in battle. Otherwise, they felt that they would end up in the underworld. Now, warriors were brought to Valhalla by Odin's warrior maidens, the Valkyries. Dead people were buried or cremated with some of their belongings. So, for example, a Viking warrior who died in battle could be buried with his sword or his axe, or a few more possessions as well. Now, some Viking chiefs were actually given ship burials. So they were actually buried on their ship. They would also be buried with other things like weapons and animals as well. So that is the dead and Valhalla. Now, some other Viking myths. Viking myth number 1 about Odin's eye. So as we know, Odin was the father of the gods. When on Midgard, he decided he wanted to know everything so he could stay on Asgard. Now, he needed true wisdom. To get this, he had to drink from a well guarded by Mimir. Now, to drink from it required a price. Now, he met a giant on the way and had to answer 3 riddles to know where the well was. To drink, he had to give Mimir his right eye. So he gave his right eye and drank from the well, and that then meant he could then see everything, past and future. So that is a myth that they have about Odin and Odin's eye, how he lost his eye. Viking myth number 2 is about Sif's golden hair. Now, Sif was Thor's wife, and she loved her long golden hair. Now, Loki knew this, so he sneakily decided to cut her hair off while she slept. Thor apparently returned to Asgard to find this had happened, and when he heard that Loki did it, he was absolutely furious. Now, Loki was ordered by Odin to restore Sif's hair, so Loki travelled through the realms to the dwarfs. He got them to make a gold bar into threads, and then Loki returned to Asgard with the gold threads, and Sif had her golden hair returned. So that is another myth that they have about Sif's hair involving Loki. Now, your task number 4 is to use the information that you have learned to complete the worksheet on Viking beliefs. So thinking about what we have discussed about the Vikings and their beliefs, you have on task number 4 a worksheet with some questions for you to answer about the Vikings, their beliefs, their religion, and what we have learned. So again, if you pause the PowerPoint here to complete that sheet. Okay, our second last task for today, just recapping everything that we have covered. You're trying to fill in the blanks to work out the names of the Viking gods. So again, pause the PowerPoint and give yourself a few minutes to try and fill in the blanks and name as many of these Viking gods as you can. And here is the answers here. So look at how many that you got right. Some of them we've discussed, some of them we haven't, some of them you may have heard of, some of them you have never heard of. If there's any you've not heard of, you can find out more information about them as well. Okay, so to recap what we have covered. So obviously at the start we said we're learning all about Vikings religion, and our aims by the end of the lesson were firstly to explain what the Vikings believed in and how they worshipped. Well, we know that the Vikings were pagans, so that meant that they believed in more than one god. Now, how they worshipped, you would have seen from the video and from what we've discussed, they like to worship in open places like forests. Your second name was to name two gods or goddesses and describe what they represent. So have a think to yourself just now. Can you name two gods or goddesses and describe what they represent? So for example, Thor, what was he the god of? If you're not sure about that, you can go back and have a look. And then the last aim for today was to compare the Vikings religion to our religions today. If we were to compare it to Christianity, there are similarities in terms of Valhalla is effectively the Vikings' version of heaven. The underworld is the Vikings' version of hell. How they like to worship, the fact that they did believe in gods and not just one god compared to us. So there are similarities, but there are some differences as well, which you can think about. And that is Viking religions and beliefs. So finally, what I'd like to do is to try and summarise what you've learned about Viking religion and beliefs in a tweet.